With the business set up and all of the directory details in there, we now will want to run a pay run. So to do this, we need to go to payroll settings and check our pay schedules. Now, the pay schedule has already been set up as part of the business setup, and we can just click on it here to make a change. Because we're paying our director an annual salary split into 12 equal parts, we need to make sure that this button here is ticked. If we wanted to change the name of the pay run, we could do that. And we could also change the frequency if we wanted to, so it might be quarterly or annually, as well as the monthly that we're selecting here. If we wanted to put a payslip message in, we can do this here, and we can also look at the pay run warnings. If we ticked all of the pay run warnings, it's not going to have a massive effect on a manual pay run. These will just come through and give us information that we might want to look at. However, that might get a bit tedious over time. So there's certain ones that we don't know, we're not interested in. We're not interested about national minimum wage for a director. We're not using qualifications in this sense. We're not interested particularly if the director's having a birthday or a work anniversary, and we're not going to have any unpaid earnings. You can go through this and set this up as you want. It might be that you leave all of the warnings set up initially and then change it as you get more used to the system. If you were setting up an automated pay run, and that's where the real time saving in this comes, the pay run warnings as part of the process of setup for that automated pay run, and at which point they become significantly more important, because that's when they will trigger the pausing of an automated pay run, for example, if a tax code update error has occurred. In this scenario, we've just made those changes and we're going to click save. We can then go to pay run. And as this is the first pay run that we're going to do, we click on new pay run. And you can see, you can select the pay schedule here. Director pays would allow multiple pay schedules if, for example, you had two directors in there, and for one wanted to be paid annually and one wanted to be paid monthly. Remember, we've changed the name, which is why it's come up with Frida's pay run. And I want to change the dates here. So the pay period ending for this pay run is going to be the 30th of June. The system will automatically flick this forward. So it'll be the 31st of July, the 31st of August, the 30th of September. And you can see that when I save this, it will change the pay period start date as well. And I want this pay to be done on the 29th of June. In this scenario, if I don't desperately want to create a pay run with empty pays, but I have that option there, and I could manually add employees to this pay run, although these features are unlikely to be used in a director pay run scenario. If I hit create, at this point the system is now picking up the information for the director for the first time. It is checking tax code updates from HMRC, checking for any stop-start notices for student and postgraduate loans, and undertaking all of the calculations. At that point, it would have been calculating pension contributions and potentially assessing people if that was applicable. I now can see that I have a pay run, I have taxable earnings here. You can see that as predicted, there's no tax to be paid, but we've just got a little bit of information here about the tax code being used and the calculation method. Similarly, in this scenario, there's no pension, but if there was, we'd have some of the information broken down about the employer pension contributions. If I just click on the chevron next to Frida's name, I can see that she has here, that's her earnings line, that's how it's been calculated. And if I wanted to, I could add pay information here. So if we wanted to add a bonus line, I could do this by adding earnings and just putting that information in. Again, similarly, if at the last minute I was told I needed to make a deduction, I could do that here as well. And if for some reason I was making a late payment here, or if I'd had to go back in and change some of the figures, I could then obviously mark this individual as a late submission, and that would then be flagged on the FPS. In this case, I don't need to make any additional changes. It's a very simple director payroll. If I want, I can mark this as complete. You'll see up here that we have 2 warnings. This is because things that we had flagged under our pay run warnings tabs have been triggered. One is that we have BACS details not set up for the business. This isn't surprising as Frida doesn't use BACS to pay herself. And we also have tax code update errors. Again, in this scenario, this isn't a real business. The HMRC settings are set up in test mode. Therefore, there can be no tax code updates. Once we've checked that the warnings are there and there's nothing that we need to do, we can go back to pay run actions. If I wanted at this point some draft reports, I could go and get those down. If I wanted to look at the draft pay slips, again, I could look at those here. There's also a number of pay run actions that we could potentially do. We could adjust the pay period if we'd initially got the setup wrong. We could mark both of them as a late submission rather than individually. In this case, we only have one director, so not a big issue. And on the finalisation of the pay run, I get to see an overview of everything. My pay slips have been scheduled to send on the 29th of June. My journals have been exported to my accounting software. In this scenario, I've got a submission status issue with HMRC. Not to be surprised by that because this isn't a genuine business and therefore it doesn't link to HMRC. And if at any point I want to go and look at historic pay runs, I can always go and click on the pay run tab, and then that'll provide me with a list of the pay runs that have been done within Director Pays and will give me any useful information. So for here, the pay slips have been scheduled, but they haven't been sent yet. That will change at the point that those get sent. And I've successfully completed a pay run, and the only thing that can make life better was if I went forward and automated that.